Thanks for coming along this morning. I know it was a tough call as to whether to hit Oxford Street or come here. Apparently Oxford Street was an absolute zoo yesterday, and I gather that the tills were ringing to the tune of about £1 billion yesterday. So recession? Anyone? And the real issue about today, and what I hope that we've attracted here, are people that are going to build on what's already started. Because the first session with Ben and Patrick, and I've asked these guys to open the day very significantly, because both Ben and Patrick have been instrumental in actually getting the mainstream media to pick up the gauntlet on some of the stuff that they would obviously much prefer to hide. So Patrick, I'll talk more about his 21st Century Newswire website shortly. But Ben first came onto my radar after he did an interview with Tony Gosling. Some of you will know Tony. Tony's radio show in Bristol. He does a Friday evening drive time radio show. And Ben, this was back in May, I suppose, and Ben had been working for some weeks with a company called G4S. Remember them? Well, you better get to know them, because soon they're going to be, you're going to see their logo on the streets masquerading as policemen. But Ben was concerned about the level of security at the London Olympics, and it was absolutely down to Ben working with G4S and being absolutely appalled at what he saw. And he tried to approach the mainstream media with his insights. And of course, he had a bit of a track record because he used to work with the Cook Report. So, you know, he's no newcomer to investigative journalism. But funnily enough, he couldn't get any of the mainstream media to pick up the gauntlet on his insights whilst training with G4S. So the story broke when Tony Gosling interviewed Ben. And then a few days later, Ben appeared, I think, on the Lou Collins radio show, and then with the UK Column, and more about what the UK Column is doing with its daily news show later on this afternoon. And because of that, because of those interviews, the media picked it up, and then eventually, of course, the questions were asked in Parliament. And of course, everyone claiming that they had absolutely no idea that things were in such an appalling state. Well, and I say Ben was certainly the prime mover on that. And then with the recent focus on the paedophilia cover-up within the BBC, and of course, everyone has at last been able to come out of the woodwork. Anybody who tried to come out before, anybody who tried to raise the issue was vilified. And Ben, in association with Patrick, actually ran an item about Ben's experience with a certain MP called Ken Clarke. And at the time, when the news item appeared, Ken Clarke's office, interestingly, requested that the news item be removed and that any reference to Ken Clarke be removed. And even actually suggested that it was probably just a case of mistaken identity. Well, Ben has subsequently made or lodged a formal complaint with the police about Ken Clarke's behaviour. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that makes it into the mainstream media. So this morning, Ben's going to give us an update on that and share his views on what's occurring right now. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ben Fellows.
Thanks, Ian. Well, hello, everybody. I am Ben Fellows, and up there's my website, so if you want to contact me or whatever, you can just jot that down, or you can come and give me your card or something, and I email everybody all the time anyway. So I started out as an investigative journalist with the Cook Report. I wasn't a full-time employee, I was freelance because I did the undercover portions of their programmes. The way the format would run, basically, was that the undercover guys would go out and they would do preliminary research, and they'd do some undercover photography of whatever the story was going to be. And then we'd hand that over, then the producer of the program would build the program around what we'd got, and then obviously Roger would come in at the end and do the front bit and the end bit. And that's roughly how the program kind of was put together, really. So I was there, really, as a young boy, and to basically be a child actor, which is what I was. That's how I got into it. And how I started, basically, well, that's me doing G4S and the 2012 Olympics, which nothing happens to me, by the way, whatsoever. Everyone was saying, you know, you're going to death threats and all that kind of thing, and nothing, not a thing. All that happened was that G4S lost £700 million, which, you know, I'm quite proud of, actually. So, and they're going to be detectives now, by the way, G4S. They've got the contract to be police detectives. So, so they're basically going to be ex-police officers who are then working for G4S, is the theory. But they're cheaper. Obviously, they don't cost the 60 grand or the 30 grand, whatever the detectives now cost. They're a lot cheaper. So I thought I'd just mention that. That's me as a child actor. That's Ben Fellows. That's the 1986 model. I was extremely young, and I was 11 years old there, but I was only about 4'11". So I was very young and what have you. So that's me at the RSC playing Fleance, which was my first job. And from then on, I basically wanted to be an actor. That's all I wanted to do. My parents couldn't stop me. They hated the idea of you being an actor. They were not happy about that at all. They basically wanted me just to do the thing, go to university, finish school, all that kind of stuff. But I was insistent that I wanted to be a child actor. And so the process started. And this morning, what I'd like to talk to you about is the process of being a child actor, what that means, and then how that fits into the BBC and my article about paedophilia in the wider entertainment industry. And as you'll see, as we talk about it later, paedophilia is actually used as currency within the entertainment industry. And by currency, what I'm talking about is that if I know a piece of information about you that you don't want out there in the world, you're now completely controllable by me. It's as simple as that. So if you're having an affair with someone and you don't, and perhaps you're a politician that are preaching family values, you don't want that information out there, do you? Right. I know that. You're under my control completely. Yeah. That's how it's used. And so when you see these celebrities and famous people, they're famous because they've been chosen for a reason. Right? And that's everybody, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah? And that's a fact. And we'll get to that in a bit and how that all works in. And it's quite interesting. And, well, hopefully you'll find it good. So anyway, that's the school I went to, Sylvia Young Theatre School. So after the RSC, you might recognise her there. Amy Winehouse? Yeah? Of course, now deceased. But all those kids, this is not my school photo, so I'm not in that one. My mum has it in her scrapbook, and when I said I was doing the presentation and could I have it, she said, well, I've got to go in the loft, I've got to get the bags out. You know, I was like, okay, forget it, which is why I only had one picture, because a friend of mine gave it to me, an ex-girlfriend who I'd given the photo to when I was a kid, and she emailed it back to me on Facebook. Anyway, so that's the school I went to, and so as a child actor, I basically said, look, how do I go about this? And Jonathan Price, who was in the show that I was doing at the RSC, said, look, you need an agent, you need to go to stage school. So that's what I did, basically. I worked all over Birmingham, all over the Midlands. I did various shows and how you did world tours, went to New York, worked on Broadway. You know, I worked constantly, both in theatre and television. This is not my CV, this is just the thing. Then you need an agent, and this is Ari Gold from a TV show in America. He's an agent, and what agents do is they procure people. So in my case, it was a child agent, and child agents procure children. That's the whole idea, right? This person here is everything to an actor. Without the agent, you don't get auditions, you don't meet directors or producers, nothing happens to you. Anyone you meet that says, I'm an actor, you say, have you got an agent? They say, no. Well, you might want to be an actor, but you actually have no prospects really of working or actually making a living at it. And you'll notice that only very few people actually do end up making a living at it. And it's not because they're any better than anyone else, it's just they've got an agent. And usually the better the agent, the more opportunities you have. So for example, I was with Sylvia Young Theatre School. She was the biggest agent and theatre school in London at that time. So we were all on EastEnders, we were on Grange Hill, we did various TV shows, etc., etc. So the agent's everything. And also, agents send you out on castings. what these castings are, they can be called generals. And it's just about meeting and greeting someone. And you get to turn up at this audition. They say, well, we haven't really got anything for you this week, Ben, but we want you to meet some producer or some director who's coming to town for a movie. And so you go, sure, yeah. And off you trot to the hotel room. And of course, you know, this is the casting couch, and this is what it's all about. And if you think this is a joke, it really isn't. This happens in offices, it happens in hotel suites, it happens at parties, it happens within the entertainment industry. And if you think this just happens, you know, at the wider industry and not, say, at the BBC, well, obviously now you'll believe it actually goes on everywhere because of what's come out in recent weeks. But I was often sent, you know, you saw how little I was 4'11". I was 11, 12 years old, 13, 14 as a child actor. And I'd be sent to people's hotel rooms. And you know what? You'd have alcohol, they'd get you drunk, and you don't want to say anything to anyone because you're doing something secret. You're doing something that your parents shouldn't know about. My parents were in Birmingham, right? They had no idea what I was doing. I was at stage school. I lived with a family who was supposed to look after my well-being, and they didn't, you know. And of course, I was a kid, so I wanted to try and get away with everything that I wanted to try and get away with. But unfortunately, what happens then is that you get sucked into a world that because you are accepting of secret gifts, let's say alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be, whatever's your thing. You can have whatever you want, by the way. That's the other thing. So if someone says to you, Ben, we want you to turn up for this movie or this TV series, and I say, no, not really, I don't want to do it, I'm not interested. They'll say, oh, well, look, you know, we'll give you what do you like? Well, what do you want? Well, we know you like to party, so therefore, you know, we'll put on a great party every night for you. And you think, oh, okay, that's all right, 'cause that's your thing. If it's a kilo of heroin, that's what you can have. And this is what they get you. This is why a lot of stars seem out of control, because they just get given whatever they want. In the BBC, when I was there was very well-known presenters and game show hosts who liked to have young women. These weren't underage women, these were just young women. And the BBC, on taxpayers' expenses, would ship in escorts for this guy, right? And you're paying for that with your TV licence. Right? The drugs that were consumed in dressing rooms and what have you, paid for by TV licence because you get on expenses, right? And people don't know this. This goes on within the organisation. So the casting couch I had a lot of experience with, and this is Bette Davis. She told an interesting story when she was 90 years old at a governor's mansion dinner they have in Hollywood every now and again. And basically, she told a story that she was up for this particular film at MGM, which she was contracted to at the time. And when she went for the audition, she slept with the guy on the casting couch in the office, the producer of the film. That's what he wanted, to sleep with Bette Davis. So that's what he got, and she got the part in the movie. That's the deal, right? However, he got sacked a couple of hours after she'd slept with him. For some reason, another movie had failed or something, and then word came from the head of the studio, get rid, right? So they sacked him. A new guy gets put in the afternoon. The movie's still on, but now the new guy's saying, I don't know if I want Bette Davis. So guess what she did? Yeah. Chorus line. It's true, right? This is a movie. Have you seen it? Seen the show? Yeah? Well, it's out there. It's probably on YouTube or something, right? And this is a story about an audition and what you will do to get that job, right? And okay, it's lots of singing and dancing and the really great tunes and everything. But in the essence, it's I'll do anything for that job. And this is to get into the chorus of a show. This isn't even the main parts of the show, right? We have no idea what a chorus line is actually about, other than it's about an audition, right? So you'll do anything for that. So when you have a extremely famous producer standing in front of you, saying, I'm going to put you in my next movie and you're going to be a big star. Now, you can think, well, everyone says that, right? It's a joke. But when that person is actually somebody and they actually do have movies out every year, suddenly it's not a joke. So it's kind of like, okay, let's begin the negotiation. And of course, if you're a kid, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're negotiating. You're just having another glass of beer or something, right? Or they're putting out the line of Coke when you've got a bit tipsy and you're downing a line of Coke, which was my thing. I quite liked that while I was a kid. That's me at the BBC. When I used to go on BBC News 24 quite a lot. And of course, that's Jimmy Savile. It's the vile creature that he is. And so I wrote this article with the BBC, try and fix it. basically because of the way the board of the BBC works, right? With Chris Patton, who is the guy to get everyone out of trouble, and all he's done really is put people into trouble. So anyway, this goes on in the industry, and I suppose the way that I dealt with it was to be a flirt, right? That was my thing. I'd flirt with you, right? So I'd give you everything. I'd make you laugh. I'm a great conversationalist. I'd sit down. I would entertain you at the audition, right? Which I thought was my job, to be fair, whilst they sometimes took their clothes off or tried to put their tongues down your throat or whatever they were trying to do, which was usually pretty gross and disgusting, and you try and fend off. And I'm sure most people in here have had experiences like that when you've been at nightclubs and had unwanted attention. Yeah, well, that's fine because you're an adult and they're an adult and you're all a bit tipsy, and that's fine. What we're talking about here is children in the entertainment industry, in an adult industry that shouldn't really be there in the first place. Not really, So really, the agents are where the problem starts. And the stage schools are where the problem starts. Well, I'm not casting any aspersions on stage school or agents. Because they are procurers of children or of people, whatever, that's a place to attract paedophiles. Wherever children are, that's where paedophiles are, right? The church, the Cub Scouts, We don't like to think about it, but that's true. Wherever you get groups of children, we've seen it in nurseries. Penny?
Children's homes.
Yeah. In Wales, the children's homes. Yeah, and all over the country, we see this every time. Wherever children are, there's paedophiles. That's their thing. That's the animal instinct of a paedophile. They have to go where the children are, right? So, bearing that in mind, or rather, not that slide, but the casting couch one, I guess, you are then put into a situation where you are the prey and they are the predator. Imagine sort of walking into a lion's den and crossing your fingers hoping they don't attack you, right? And this is the position that I put myself in. And I freely admit that, right? I could have walked away at any time. But the trouble is, you get treated so well, it's very difficult. I wasn't sexually abused, by the way. Nothing ever happened to me. My story is one of near misses, yeah? And very minor assaults, if you want to call it that. I call it groping when it gets to that level. But, the police have a slightly different definition and what have you, as I found out when I went to see them about Ken Clarke, or they came to see me, right? However, we'll get to that in a bit. This is the BBC's television centre. At this end, you've got studios from, I think there were 8 to 1 going that way, or 1 to 8 going that way, if you look at it that way. This is the new entrance here, over here, which we don't see. This was the old entrance here. And then the dressing rooms for guests were upstairs. And so everyone who was appearing on Top of the Pops or whatever shows would all have their dressing rooms on the basically ground level. And the basement level was where all the celebrities had their dressing rooms. And if you worked at the BBC for any length of time, that's where you would have your dressing room as well. And everyone shot on the same day at the BBC, right? So, for example, when I was doing a children's show at the BBC, next door to us was absolutely fabulous. The Generation Game was a few studios down. Yeah, and they all shoot, I think when I was there, it was a Tuesday or Thursday. So every recording at the BBC happens on a Tuesday or Thursday. So if you go to see Graham Norton now, you'll turn up at 11 o'clock in the morning, not at whenever it is at night, to see the recording of the show, right? BBC Radio do a lot of recording on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I think that's all they do now. I'm not sure. So my point being is that children, basically, are in the vicinity of grown-ups, whilst you're making the programme, yeah? So even though it's a preschool programme that I was on, everyone was looking after the watershed. You can't say chips or Coke or anything like that, right? Because obviously it's bad for kids, right? What you find here is that, well, in the making of it, you're in the same dressing rooms as, Mick Jagger, or as Roger Daltrey, or whomever's on Top of the Pops that week and doing filming when you're doing filming. And so it's very easy for children and adults to mingle, and I don't think people have really appreciated that during the Jimmy Savile debate, let's say, and discussions of what's going on, is that children and adults mix all the time in entertainment industry on a social level. Yeah, so it doesn't matter what you're doing. Say if you go down to Shepperton Film Studios and you're doing a commercial, you'll be rubbing shoulders with Johnny Depp who's there doing a movie, right? So we all get that. So it's the same thing. So if you're a paedophile and you're in the entertainment industry because your fame gives you access to children, and let's face it, fame gives you access to everybody. Michael Jackson got kids given to him, yeah? Most famous guy in the world, and parents just went, hey, take my kid off to Neverland, great, thank you. Excuse me, you're going where? Neverland. I think I've got a problem, actually. You're not going. If it was my kid, But people do. They give up responsibility to these people who they see on television or on the theatre. Why? They're just people. And in actual fact, you don't know them, right? We don't know who these people are, right? You don't know me, right? You see me here today and you think, oh, maybe he's a nice chap, and what have you, he's told a compelling yarn and I've been entertained, right? Okay. But I could go home and beat my wife senseless. And then still come back and smile next week and go, hi, everybody, I'm back, here's another friendly presentation. You don't know me, yeah? I don't know these celebrities. You don't know them. Just because they appear on TV, that's a persona. That's just one image, yeah? But they breathe, they go to the toilet, they swear, they do all these things that we do. And, of course, they're paedophiles as well, Not all. Tiny, tiny fraction. But that tiny, tiny fraction is ruining it for the great industry that the entertainment industry is. And it is a great industry. If you go in it, you have a wonderful time, as long as you're not abused, right? And a lot of people aren't abused now. And abuse is a very flexible word in the industry, because if you're an adult, then is it really abuse if someone says, well, if you sleep with me, I'll give you a part in my film? Nah, it's consenting adults at that point, isn't it? It's a debate, that we can have. Should that happen? Should that conversation happen? No, of course it shouldn't. It should all be dealt with very professionally. And most things are, quite frankly. They have to be now, because people can sue people for gazillions anyway. So I'm going off on a tangent again. But anyway, back to my story. So the agents are the problem. It's where it all starts. Now, if I was a paedophile, what I would basically be here is the top of the pyramid, right? It's a business structure. It works in exactly the same way as any business works, yeah? And it works in that way for a particular reason. It's so that the paedophile is protected at the top. Here, the staff see that as children. I didn't make this, by the way. I got it off the internet. I can't do Photoshop and stuff like Ian does and all those people. I think it's great. So I had to get it done, and I kind of went, this will just illustrate it, right? It's a pyramid structure. That's the thing. So there's your children, who are the staff. You've got your junior management. These are the stage schools. You've got your middle management. These are the agents. And there you go. You've got your producers, your directors, your financiers. They're your upper management, right? So what you don't want to have is a connection between your senior manager and your staff, do you? In any business, you don't want to have that. When I worked for Channel 4 for a short time, Mark Thompson, who was the CEO at that point, didn't want anything to do with me. Right? Yeah, there's other managers to deal with that. There's other people. I don't want to talk to you. I'll say hello and good morning and be pleasant and stuff like that, and you'll be courteous and do the same. But outside of that, I don't want to know you. Right? If you've got an issue with programming or anything like that, send it up the line. Right? Until it gets so important that, and they do that for a reason, so they can be protected. It's a simple thing. As we've seen, Mark Thompson over the Jimmy Savile thing said, oh, well, I was in charge, but I didn't know anything about it. Yeah, he didn't. Didn't know anything about it. Guy's oblivious. Right? I worked with him at Channel 4. He purposefully makes sure he's not involved in anything, that guy, right? For this very reason. He doesn't want to have a conversation with anybody. He started off being a weather producer at the BBC, So, these people aren't anything special when it comes down to it. They're just people, and they rise to the top very quickly, usually because they're quite flexible in how they think about things, So there's your paedophile at the top, which is senior management. So he's protected by the middle management, stage schools, the agents, people like that, And so what you want to do is get your stage schools and agents, and we saw this with Jimmy Savile, didn't we? He wasn't the top, I don't think. I think there's someone else up there. Possibly Royal, maybe. Could be, yeah, maybe. However, he was, I think, middle management. Because then what he did, he went to his mates, his paedophile friends, who are cab drivers and gardeners and whoever else we've seen being arrested and what have you, who are the regular people. And he got them to do his work for him. He was then famous, so then he basically got kids that came into the BBC, right? Because who's going to complain about Jimmy Savile? One of the most famous people in the country, right? When the police came to see me and said, oh, will you make a statement against Ken Clarke? I said, Ken Clarke is a living, breathing person. You couldn't even arrest Jimmy Savile until he was dead. And yet you want me to go to a cabinet minister and basically say you groped me in the room, which of course I did, because he did. But, you know, that was the discussion I had with the police, right? That I didn't want to be the fall guy for just some fishing expedition that they had because they wanted to get credit for something, but, you know. So we'll get to that in a bit. So that's the structure as I see it, and it's very simple. It works every single time. It's guaranteed to work. So you have your paedophile at the top, which could be a director, a producer, or a financier. Often, for me, it was producers and directors. BBC would be financing something. They were my biggest employer. And so you never met the financiers. They were just there, you know, and the departments, you know, had their money and what have you. In filmmaking, it's different. When I make independent movies, then I deal with finances and stuff like that. Even a guy last year who was a wonderfully lovely gay guy grabbed me by the cheeks and said, if I slept with him, stayed with him over the weekend and slept with him and what have you, he'd give me the money for a film. And, you know, I was very poor at the time. And I just thought, could I do it? I don't know, maybe. £1 million is a lot of money to make your film with, right? So you know, as an adult, you know, it still even happens. So anyway, so you've got your paedophiles, you've got your middle managers, and this is, you see, with Jimmy Savile. So he had his little minions that then would go off, you know, and these could be people who ran schools or whatever, wherever children were, wherever he could use his celebrity or whatever to do what he wanted to do. Seems to be what's been talked about, doesn't it? And stuff like that. So, you know, I recognise this now wherever I see it, you know, in every sort of, you know, you want to call it New World Order company, you know, or activity that they do, you see this pyramid structure, because that's their thing. We all know her, right? Yeah? She wanted to, as a young lawyer, wanted to lower the age of consent, working for a paedophile organisation, really, basically, to 14. How about that? Fancy 14-year-olds having sex? That's Harriet Harman. It's Harriet Harman, yeah, MP. So yeah, she wanted to lower the age of consent from 16 to 14. In actual fact, a lot of people have been discussing the fact that they want to get rid of the age of consent at all, really, which seems to be ridiculous to me. And so, you know, coming up to the Leveson inquiry, I had an interesting discussion with one of the Leveson people yesterday, in actual fact. So we'll get to that in a minute. So what's happened, basically, to the BBC is that all this has been uncovered, right? And it's collapsed the integrity of the BBC. It hasn't collapsed the BBC. The BBC's fine. It's a building. It's got people in it. People are still going to work doing their thing, right? But their integrity has been damaged, and rightly so as well, because obviously people knew about what was going on with Jimmy Savile. And if it was true in his day, and I'm telling you, it was true in my day, you know, and basically, is it going on today? Maybe. Maybe in a different guise. You know, what happened to me it wasn't the same thing that happened to those children with Jimmy Savile. I was employed by the BBC. I wasn't a guest on a show or anything like that. So it was a slightly different thing. I was more put into parties and stuff. And then it's who you meet because of that. That's part of the problem, and auditions and what have you. So the integrity of the BBC is really damaged a great deal over this because people knew, and instead of saying, you know what, Jimmy Savile, there's a problem with that guy. What they did was then, he's a big star. Can't really say anything, can I? Or they said something to someone, and that person said, he's a big star. What the hell do you think you're doing? Which is what people say a lot in this business, yeah? You never eat lunch in this town again? Yeah? Happens all the time. I've been told it in one way or another loads of times. I'm still here, I'm still doing my thing, and, you know, and what have you. People can always get out in the police station and make a report to the police, couldn't they? All these BBC staff that are pleading, I didn't know anything, right? Well, if you're suspicious, if you're that suspicious to be concerned about it, and you remember it 30 years, 4 years after the fact, surely you could have gone out to the police station and just said, look, I just want to put it on the record. I don't want anything to come of it necessarily, but at least it's on the record, right? No one did, you know? So whilst all the BBC are kind of, you know, plucking at the heartstrings, saying, oh, it's all terrible, you know, our reputation's down the toilet. Well, reputation should be down the toilet. It's a despicable thing that they've allowed to fester in the organisation. And it is festering, and it is there. And if you don't weed it out completely, what is a great institution, it is a great institution. When I was at the BBC, outside of everything that I've talked about, they were basically, it was the best place to work in the world, really, you know. When everything was fair and right and good with the world, jobs you did there, it was great. You had wonderful opportunities at the BBC. You BBC Radio. I would never have done radio had I not have been at the BBC doing radio and what have you. Worked on BBC Radio 2, did all sorts of educational programmes and stuff. It's a great opportunity existed. Now I'm not so sure. This is, of course, one of the countries that if you don't have a free press, this is kind of what we're going to be, really. We're on our way to being, yeah? And, of course, that's Nazi Germany. And then I decided to put a list of other countries up who also don't have a free press, because that's what Leveson's about. It's about not having a free press anymore. It isn't actually about phone hacking, yeah? Phone hacking has been dealt with by the police. And a journalist friend of mine actually broke phone hacking. And basically, those people who were the initiators of it, who actually did it, went to prison 2 years before it even broke in on Channel 4 with Andy Davis on the mainstream. Yeah? They'd already been caught, and this guy had been to prison, some private detective. Right? Suddenly it breaks. Suddenly you get all these celebrities and what have you coming in. And it's a despicable thing. Right? But it was easily cured. All you had to do was put a PIN number into your phone. So any celebrity from when it broke then complained, 6 months later, well, they could have just put a new PIN number in their phone. Simple. Or not have a phone. I don't even have a mobile phone. It doesn't happen to me. Right? Newspapers were told that they couldn't really report on news anymore, on politics. You can't really question the government and the powers that be. But what you can do is you can report on celebrities. It's going to be wall-to-wall celebrity. And I saw it change, and I think you've probably all seen it change as well. From news to important opinion, to suddenly it's all about the important opinion of Paris Hilton's handbag. What's that about? It's a handbag. It's a 400 quid handbag. You're an idiot if you buy that, right? It's a 400 quid handbag. What's a handbag? Just something nice to put stuff in. It's like me having a £1,000 wallet. What for? It's in the back pocket. No one sees it. I pull it out. I show off at the counter. Well, who cares, right? So Leveson really is about the government getting control of the press. And that's it, right? Everybody has been arrested and the police are going through their files. Murdochs have been shredding like crazy, and they're going to get away with it because they were always going to get away with it, and they're really the perpetrators. And also they said to their journalists in their organisation, you can't belong to a union. Why can't you belong to a union if you work for the Murdochs? Well, because if you have a problem, you'll get told to do something unethical. You go to your union and you say, hey, look, I've got a problem with my employer, and your union takes up your case. Well, Murdochs didn't want that. So you couldn't belong to the NUJ, right? Or the BAJ, the British Association of Journalism, who I'm with. So you can belong to anybody. And so these things, people had nowhere to turn. Journalists had nowhere to turn to. So before we all start saying journalists are bad and they're corrupt and this and that, yeah, of course they are. There are people there that are corrupt, like people are corrupt in the police. People are corrupt in every daily life. It's the nature of who we are, I think. But they had nowhere to turn. They had to do it. Otherwise, they'd lose their job. And we all know what losing your job means in London. It's pretty horrific. So people are going to do their best, I suppose, to keep their jobs. And so before we start ragging on the journos, they have been arrested. Yeah, Rebecca Brooks is, I think, going to be. She may even go to jail. We might be, lucky in a way. I doubt it, but it might happen, right? So that's what that's about. So all the people have been caught. Why do we need suddenly new laws, new institutions set up to handle the press? Right? Why? Everyone's been caught. Everyone got dealt with. It took a while for it to come out, I grant you, but things do. Right? And when it came out, it really came out. So why do we need Leveson inquiry? Yeah, we'll have a little inquiry. We'll decide this is where all the bodies were buried. Right? This is what happened. But outside of that, why do we need new laws and new institutions set up? We don't, do we? Otherwise, we're going to turn into Nazi Germany. And like I said, I put these lists of all these countries, and I've forgotten who the countries are myself now. So, anyone know who this is? This is my new game. This is my wife did it for me, right? So this is Burma, right? Or one of the flags of Burma. And then you've got the USSR. Don't have a free press, right? Pravda, remember Pravda, right? You see it. It's in Dr. Strangelove. They say, we've got the biggest bomb in the world, we're going to blow up everything if you set off a nuclear weapon. And they said, yeah, but it's only scary if everyone knows about it. It goes, yeah, we're going to put it in Pravda on Monday, but, So, Pravda. The Romanian Republic under Ceausescu, Again, didn't have a free press. Republic of China doesn't have one. Iraq under Saddam Hussein didn't have one. Cuba didn't have one. Uruguay, Chile, Argentina, which is there with a nice little sun symbol. And, of course, now, if the Leveson report gets implemented in full, you won't have a free press. Oh, but that's OK, though, right? What does that mean? It doesn't really mean anything. Right? It just means that you get more of Paris Hilton, you'll get more of celebrities, you get more of Big Brother. Oh, it's not even on now, is it? I didn't even watch TV. Or whatever it is, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. But what you won't get is you won't get news. Not real news. You won't really know that fluoride's killing you, causing you brain damage. They'll go, it's good for your teeth. What the hell? You know, these people are crazy. So that brings me on to basically Kengate, right? Who I'm trying to, this is not sailing at the moment, but it will do. I've put it out to a few mainstream media people and stuff like that. So Kengate. So basically I had a phone call yesterday from someone who was a Leveson advisor, and they checked out and they were a Leveson advisor. And they basically said, look, what's been happening with Leveson Report since the report came out is that you've seen TV attacks, you've seen the press attacks, you've seen now radio attacked with what happened with Kate Middleton in hospital, where a prankster in Australia on a radio station, which happens all the time. Remember they did it here with, I think it was John Coleshaw and Tony Blair or something like that, and he called him pretending to be William Hague and got through, right? So it happens all the time. What people don't do then is go and kill themselves, right, for putting a phone call through. So again, they've closed down that part of the conversation, haven't we? We can't now discuss this because someone's dead, you know? So effectively, they've attacked radio as well. So now they're going to be looking for the internet. And so when I made my allegations against Ken Clarke in an article on the 21st Century Wire, Patrick Henningson's web wire, I thought I'd get sued like instantly, right? And nothing happened, right? Nothing happened at all. And yesterday I found out why. And this very nice person from the Leveson Inquiry basically told me that you and Patrick and the other bloggers that put up your posts and what have you are going to be the poster children for the censorship of the internet in this country, for the same reason as the Australian pranksters are the poster children for radio, right, broadcasting. And my mouth was hung open. I went, you know, and they said, yeah, that's basically what's going to happen to you. And I said, so why are you telling me? He said, I'm giving you a 5 minutes warning because I like you. And that was it. Apparently, we'd met at a party once and I was nice. I am nice, that's the thing, you know, not worried. So what's Kengate? Well, Kengate was when I was working for the Cook Report. And I was a child actor. And a family friend came to me who worked at Central Television and said, look, Ben, are you busy? And I went, no. He said, do you want to do a nice little job? And I said, OK, fine. What is it? And he goes, I can't say. It's all very cloak and dagger. Right? It was for the Cook Report. Right? I was like, yeah, it's like James Bond sort of stuff. Great. I got whisked in a car down to London. And I was abducted by Central TV for a number of weeks while we shot this thing. So I didn't really know what I was doing. And there's Roger, as we know for the Cook Report. That's the article. We used the same picture again because I didn't have one. This is when it appeared in the Express, so we got it into mainstream media, which was really cool, which was great. That happened at the Olympics as well, but they replaced me with an actor. So, you know, some white actor they put in a hat and thing and said he was the undercover guy. But he was saying basically what I had said. So to be actually on the front of the Express newspaper is actually a really good thing. And, you know, them acknowledging my existence and what have you. So that's me and my wife, Julia. And this is the letter that the Cabinet Office sent to Patrick Henningson. The 21st Century Wire. Nothing was sent to me. This was just sent to him. And it basically says that the comments are defamatory, blah, blah, blah. It was mistaken identity, as Ian said earlier. You know, maybe he didn't understand who it was. Ian Greer stood there in his office and said, Ben Fellows, well, Ben Worrell, Ken Clarke, right? Because Worrell was my stage name for the job, right? So when someone says, Kenneth Clarke MP, hey, it's not mistaken identity. That's who you get introduced to, unless there's two, right? I'll give you that. If there's two Kenneth Clarke MPs, then maybe, you know, I doubt it. So that's the letter they sent, and they said, we're going to sue you if you don't pull this down. And I said, well, you know what, Patrick, that's a request, don't do anything. And I published the letter, which they didn't like, but that's what I do. I don't keep secrets, I publish things, right? So if you come to attack me, then I'll tell the world about it, you know? So the police came over to see me once I'd said this. And what happened was basically, I was in Ian Greer. Ian Greer was a political lobbyist. I was in his office. Kenneth Clarke was in there. I was there to deliver a letter to Ian Greer about a project we were working on the Cook Report, basically saying our dodgy company was going to hire you, right? And pay him lots of money. So he was in, you know, so it's a good letter for him to get. Kenneth Clarke was in the office. I was introduced to him. Why he was there, I have no idea. Maybe he was there to meet me, maybe not. While I was in there, I got groped by him. Now, I'm not going to go into too much more detail because I've given a statement to the police and there's an investigation going on. But broadly speaking, that's basically what happened. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. But the police came to see me at my house. I didn't call them. They just rocked up. I did the Express interview. And the police said, look, we want you to tell us what you told the Express. I said, OK, fine, not a problem. You know, the press can't have the names that I mentioned and the police not. I mean, that would be ridiculous, right? So I said, so I told my story. I gave them all the names that who had basically been you know, inappropriate with me as a child actor, because I was saying it was the wider industry. And, of course, about Kenneth Clarke, which they're only there for Kenneth Clarke, really. They weren't interested in anyone else. And they said, look, we suggest that you make a statement. And I said, why? And they said, because in 6 months' time, you won't be able to do it, and then it will be impossible for you to get out of the corner that you're now in. I went, well, I mean, I had agreed to make the statement already, right? So I didn't need to be cajoled or bullied or slightly talked to. And I was like, well, and now I know what he meant. It was a warning. It wasn't a threat or whatever. It was just, it wasn't any kind of pushing you in the direction. It was a warning. And the warning was that something was going to happen to the internet within the next 6 months, because they knew what was going to happen. Because of what the Leveson inquiry had already done. And phone hacking, they could see that it was going to damage the police as well. This is not just about the press, but attack on the police. Scotland Yard's been sold off, by the way. Do we know that? Yeah? Scotland Yard's been sold to a private company, right? The actual building. So the police know what's going on. They know they're being attacked. It's a Cold War that's going on, clearly. And so the police said, look, you're in a corner. And I went, what corner? I said, exactly, you don't even see it. But when it comes down on you, it'll be like a ton of bricks. So I said, OK, fine. But they wouldn't explain it to me. And they left just like that. And I thought, OK. And then another officer came and did the statement, and that was that. And it was only until that phone call yesterday that I realised that they knew they were going to try and censor the internet. And because my story had appeared on the internet first, before it appeared anywhere else, they were going to basically say to me, look, this guy is causing gossip on the internet. He's the reason why and he's just trying to smear a cabinet minister, right? A senior cabinet minister. Probably one of the most senior cabinet ministers. Ken Clarke has been there through everything, right? And so had I not made a statement to the police, now with what's coming down with Leveson and that phone call yesterday, like they said, it would be too late to do it in the future. Because as soon as they come out and say, oi, that's it, you're done, which Leveson did to the radio people, right? That blew up and they didn't know what hit them, right? They were in a corner, they didn't know it, right? They'd put themselves in a corner because they did prank phone calls, right? So I was in a corner, and so basically I was being warned. Do something about it. Now because I've made the allegations to the police and the statement has been written, it exists, I'm now a protected witness. It is now an ongoing police investigation. And so that brings us up to where we are today, which is it's still crackling on. We're still getting stories out there. We're in the mainstream more and more now, which is really great. It was a surprise to me that I found myself out of the mainstream, and then I'm finding myself going back in other ways and stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed what I've had to say. I hope you find it useful and stuff like that. And thanks for listening. And we'll continue the saga. And if you want to catch up, that's my website. I do a little radio show. So check that out and stuff like that. It would be really cool. And thanks ever so much. And I'll see you soon. Take care.